welcome to Moving Well. And just a reminder for everybody, this is not an exercise class. It is what we call neural movement. You'll also hear it as Feldenkrais method or awareness through movement. And the difference is we're not looking to build muscles or build strength. We do end up stronger because we end up more organized, but we're moving in a way that actually communicates with our brain and allows our brain to communicate with our muscles and it helps to change the way we use ourselves, which should become more comfortable, more functional, and just help all your joints last longer, among other things. And what we pay attention to are what Anat Banyel has identified as the 9 essentials for brain communication. And they involve moving slowly, do the movement slowly, paying attention to what you're sensing and feeling. You know, our brain is, well, like what we associate with kids, which is probably true for all of us. You know, we like to be talked to nicely and gently and saying nice things. The other thing is we do a variety of things. We vary the way we move and use ourselves. We allow ourselves to get excited. You know how kids get excited, and that's one of the reasons they learn so fast. If we get excited and raise our level of attention, it really wakes up our brain, and our brain just gets more curious. So the other thing is you want to keep flexible goals, and what that means is if I tell you to do some kind of a move and it's difficult for you, resist the urge to stress or strain or try to make it happen. Allow yourself to just be in the process, and in being in the process, you try different variations, you do some imagining, and let it be playful. Let it be playful. The other thing we can do we can do this anytime, but especially if a movement is difficult or we're having trouble with it, just stop and imagine doing the move. And you can imagine doing the move in a variety of ways. And that, again, when we imagine, you know, just like we learned quite some time ago now that athletes could actually imagine practicing, and it actually made a difference in the outcome of their practice, in their sport. So unless there are any questions, we'll go ahead and get started. And today we are doing a chair lesson. And the position you'll want is to move forward so that you're not against the back of the chair. Your tush is still on the chair. You can feel your sit bones on the chair. You're solid there. And then your knees are at a right angle. And your feet are flat on the floor. Good, about hip width apart. That's perfect. So the first thing you do is to close your eyes and bring your attention in. And just begin to feel yourself, feel your feet on the floor. Notice the way the right foot and the left foot connects with the floor. Notice is there more pressure on one foot than the other. And allow your attention to travel from your feet, through your ankles, through your lower legs to your knees. Then from your knees through your upper leg to your hip joints. And see if you can get a sense of your hip joints. Just move your knees one at a time, forward and backward a little bit. Just to see if you can feel where your hip joint is inside your pelvis. Sometimes when people think that their hip joint is out here, but that's not it at all. Our hip joint is actually into our pelvis, about this level. So just look for where you feel the movement in that vicinity. And then let that go. Get a sense of where your tailbone is in relationship to the chair. And let your attention travel from your tailbone through your sacrum, that flat bone in the middle of your pelvis, to your low back area where your lumbar spine begins. And just focus there for a moment and feel, can you sense whether your lumbar curve feels like it's a straight line, or does it curve in one direction or the other? Does it curve backwards towards the chair? Does it curve anteriorly towards your abdomen? Just see where yours is right now. And then continue scanning up the length of your spine through your mid-back area where your spine connects to your ribs, and then on up between your shoulder blades, all the way to that 7th cervical at the base of your neck. And if you want to put your hand back there and just feel for the 7th cervical, just to get a sense of where it is. And then continue scanning right up through your neck, the 7th cervical, or the 7 vertebrae that go from the base, the top of your shoulder area up into your head. And just gently let yourself look a little to the left and a little to the right. Just feeling what kind of movement is available in your neck for the movement of your head now. And as you're gently turning your head a little left and a little right, let the rest of your spine be in your awareness, kind of in the background. And notice, do you feel the reverberation of the turning of your head, the turning of your neck vertebra? Do you feel any kind of a response in the rest of your spine? And you may not now, but that's something to be aware of and notice at the end of the lesson also. So come forward a little bit so that you're sitting at the edge of the chair. Your sit bones are solidly on the chair. You're not going to fall off. But forward so that there's freedom for your legs to move. And now very gently lift your right arm in front of you. And this, I'm going to change that. Your dominant arm. Is anybody left-handed here? Nobody's left-handed? Okay, well, your right arm and dominant are the same thing then. So just lift your right arm in front of you. And just repeat this movement a few times. Just gently bring it up to where it's shoulder height. Just to feel what it's like. And then let your right arm rest for a moment. And then do the same thing with your left arm. Just feel any difference that there might be between your right arm and your left arm. And then let your left arm come down and rest. And just pause for a moment to feel whatever you feel in having done just this little bit of a movement. And then bring your right arm back up again, gently, and begin to just gently reach forward a little bit. Reach forward a little bit and come back. And just play with that movement. Bring it up shoulder width. As if you're trying to reach something that's a little bit further away. And as you're doing that, notice how much of yourself do you use in the reaching. then slowly lower your arm and let it rest. Take a moment to observe your breathing and any difference you feel from having done that little bit of a movement. Maybe any difference in one shoulder and the other shoulder, one arm and the other arm. Again, raise your right arm. And again, begin to do these gentle reaching forward movements, but this time do it a little different. Pay attention to your low back area and observe what you do, if anything, with your low back area. Do you feel any movement at all in your lower back? Notice if you feel movement, are you rounding your back or are you arching your back? And feel free to bring your arm down and rest it in between movements at any time. Anytime you begin to feel, or actually before you begin to feel any fatiguing, go ahead and just do a few movements. So now do it both ways. One time, think of rounding your low back as you take your right arm forward. Do that a few times. So as you round your back, notice you get a little shorter. And then let your arm rest again. Of course, the rest is to take a moment to feel what you feel, as well as giving your body a new restart, fresh start point. Okay, now do the opposite. You're going to, again, bring up your right arm. You're going to be reaching gently forward with your right arm, but this time intentionally arch your low back as you reach forward. You're arching your low back now. Notice, what do you do with your belly, with your abdomen when you're, go ahead and bring your arm down and rest for a moment. And think about this. Think about what you do with your abdominal, your lower abdominal muscles, your belly. What do you do with your belly when you're reaching like this? So take a moment to feel anything that's changed as from having done that much movement. And then again, bring up your right arm. And this time go back to rounding your back as you reach forward with your right arm. And be sure you're reaching forward and not reaching towards the floor. And again, if you feel your arm fatiguing, be sure you stop and rest. Or stop and rest before you feel it fatiguing, actually. Now, stop and rest. Bring your arm down. Now, did you play with pushing your belly out as you did it and pulling your belly in as you did it? Did you do both ways? No? Okay. I love it.
Let it take its natural course.
All right.
I did.
A gold star for
There you go. Student of the day.
All right. One more time, bring your right arm up. This time you're rounding your back and pushing your belly out. See what that does. And repeat that a couple times.
It's not so easy.
Okay, now, this time you're going to round your back but pull your belly in and see what happens. This is just for contrast.
See, I don't automatically do that, I guess. Should I be?
I do too.
Oh,
There.
okay. Oh,
And-
okay.
No, that's
It's
okay.
unanimous.
Okay, just take it in, take what you're feeling, let your brain use the information, then stop and rest, sit back in your chair and rest for a moment. Nice socks.
I'll trade you those for the best. Put that on a quilt.
So, all right. Again, come forward on your chair. Okay, this your time. Again, you're going to be extending your right arm. This time, you're going to be arching your back and reaching forward. So instead of rounding, you're arching your back and reaching forward. So when we arch our back, we get a little taller. So you just go and come back. Now, what happens if you pull your belly in when you're arching your back and reaching with your arm?
I have to coordinate it.
Yeah,
I'm not so coordinated.
Yeah.
Not very good at it.
Okay. Okay, now bring your arm down and rest for just a moment. And now the next time you're going to arch your back and push your belly out as you extend your arm. Arch your back and push your belly out as you take your arm forward. Notice when you arch your back and push your belly out, do you get taller or do you get shorter?
Hold my breath.
That's a good observation. Most of us have a habit of holding our breath way more often than we think we do. But when you went, that was one of the things. Go ahead, stop and rest, bring your arm down, take a moment to feel what you feel. That was one of the biggies in the beginning of our training, was discovering how often we held our breath. But it carries over. You'll probably start noticing how often you hold your breath when you're doing other things. One of the places I noticed immediately was anytime I was paying my bills, my belly was tight. I was holding my breath. So anyway, so now take time just to feel what you're feeling after having done that much. Notice your breathing. Note, is there any change in the way your pelvis is in contact with the floor?
Chair.
Yeah, the chair. Okay, now, as you were reaching forward, go ahead, bring your arm up one more time, right arm up one more time. And now, again, choose the method that was the most efficient for you, the most comfortable, the most efficient. And again, begin reaching it slightly forward with a little forward with your right arm. And notice, do you tend to roll your pelvis forward or roll your pelvis back? Try it each way. When you roll your pelvis forward, you tend to get a little taller. When you roll your pelvis back, notice you tend to get a little shorter.
Why would you roll it back to reach forward?
That's a very good question. Okay, we do it in the lesson to give you the contrast,
Okay.
to help you realize on the level of your brain and your nervous system that that's a really silly thing to do.
Right.
It's a very inefficient thing to do. And so that's the idea of doing all the variations that we do.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so just stop and rest. Sit back in your chair and rest for a moment. And then come forward again. Again, bring your right arm up. And take a moment to imagine how you're going to take this arm forward now in the most efficient manner. We've gone through quite a few variations, so you've probably realized that having your belly free, allowing your spine to arch and get taller. Notice, do you do anything else with your pelvis? As you reach forward with your right arm,
The twist.
it twists. It can. It has that potential. So as you reach forward with your right arm, does your pelvis on the right slide forward and the pelvis on the left go backwards?
Feels like my whole lower half twists a little bit.
Uh-huh. So now, do you notice any movement in your rib cage? As we invite more of our parts to the party, movement gets easier and more efficient. And then let that go and just sit back and rest for a moment. And one more time, come forward. Again, bringing your right arm forward. And this time, put your attention, begin reaching forward and get an overall sense of how you're using yourself. And then bring your attention to your rib cage. So after you've reached forward a time or two, in general, paying attention, really bring your attention to your rib cage and like focus first on your ribs in the front and imagine your ribs on the front. And remember, there's quite a few of them there. So how many of those ribs, of your ribs on the right in the front, can you bring into your picture? And then shift your attention to your back side, your ribs in the back that attach to your spine. And When you reach forward, you feel the ribs in the back inviting your spine along. And what about your ribs on the side? Remember, your ribs go all the way up into your armpit. And then bring your arm down and rest. And don't hesitate to stop and rest before I tell you to rest if your arm is getting fatigued. And one more time, bring your right arm up. And begin reaching forward again, paying attention to your ribs. And notice, do you feel any movement in your sternum, your breastbone? And as the ribs on the right go forward with your right arm, what do your ribs on the left do? Notice when you're inhaling and when you're exhaling. And of course, notice if you're holding your breath. Try it once or twice, holding your breath. See what that does for you. So now, as you're doing that, you can bring your arm down and rest. Now, as you're sitting there, and you've been making this move several times now in your imagination, imagine do it all in your imagination, that you're taking your right arm forward, and in your imagination, observe how much of yourself participates. Do you feel your spine rotating? Do you feel your ribs moving? Do you feel your pelvis moving? You feel your sacrum turning? And you feel your sternum turning, your breastbone? You feel rotation in your spine? And if you feel rotation in your spine, what part of your spine, how much of your spine do you feel rotating? And then just stop and rest. And now come forward on your chair again. This time bring your left arm up. And just begin to gently reach with your left hand. Just reach a little and come forward. So when you're reaching, reach where you go easily, and let that be it, and then come back. Resist the urge to reach and then reach further. Just go to where you go initially. Notice if it causes you to take a breath, and then bring your arm back. Sometimes think of your fingertips being pulled, bringing your arm forward, pushing it back. Think of your wrist being pulled, pushing your hand forward, pulling your arm. Stop and rest anytime you need to. Everybody rest for a moment.
Now the left felt straight, the right kind of going on. Would you have said something if it was going off?
No,
Is it
because
supposed to?
it's all part of the awareness. It's becoming aware of how you use yourself, how you've become organized in your body, that's the way you function.
Cockeyed.
Well, most people have their quirks, you know. Well,
You were
yeah, and
yeah, more than most.
so, no,
Don't you say.
no. If that's the beauty of the work, is that we become aware of what we're doing and how we use ourselves, and then once we become aware, then we can begin to use ourselves in different ways. And the lesson itself is designed to bring more awareness to what we're doing and bring more awareness of more of ourselves, more of our parts, because most of the time the reason we wear out shoulders and we wear out knees and hips and things is because we're not using ourselves efficiently. For like shoulders, we tend to use just the muscles around the shoulder, and unless it's a fall or something that you've injured, that's usually what causes the need, for rotator cuff surgery and that kind of stuff. So, and the same thing with hips. When we lose the flexibility of our spine and of our pelvis, then, it causes a strain and a wear and tear on our hip sockets. So, it's
interesting, because when I was walking and I don't know if it's the cold, just what exactly it is, when I'm walking the dog, my right hip feels like bone on bone. So, but standing, nothing. And walking around in the house, nothing.
Is it just when it's cold when you're walking the dog?
I guess. I've just noticed it this winter. So, summertime I ride my bike with her.
When you think about going outside and it being really cold, we have a tendency to tense ourselves.
And I think I am. Well, because of ice.
Yeah, we tense up. We have a tendency to tense up when there's ice, when there's a possibility of slipping and so on and so forth. But and so that's just kind of human nature to do that. And once we become aware of it, we can stop and breathe and choose to let our parts relax.
I try to do that.
And it's just so human.
Good.
That's
Human.
that's what we do. So
Hey, oh, listen. Come on, Mark, take care of her, smack her.
all right. Okay, come back to lifting your left arm again. And now, resume extending your arm, thinking about your fingertips being pulled. When you think of your fingertips being pulled, and be sure you come all the way back to neutral. How much of yourself do you use? You think of your wrist being pulled gently and pushed back. And be sure you pause in between each forward and back.
That's funny, not nearly like the right side.
Yeah. See? Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that is.
You feel it pulling in your neck?
I've had a neck strain the whole time we're doing this, but not painful, just that I can feel it.
And then bring your arm down and rest. Just do a few moves and then bring your arm down to rest.
You've had,
Yeah, I have.
You've had neck issues? Mm-hmm. So when we're doing a lesson, do just a few moves and then stop and rest. Anytime that there's any tensing, any discomfort at all, any resistance, pause and then restart. And also be aware of if you're breathing, if you're holding your breath, there's a tendency to tense. So, and a lot of times just inhaling and then moving as you exhale. Play with that. So, okay, where were we? Okay, bring your left arm back up again. And now, again, begin taking your arm forward and back. Thinking of your elbow leading the move, pulling your shoulder blade, pushing your wrist and hand. Be sure you come all the way back to neutral every time, all the way back. Take a breath, and then reach again. Now think of the tip of your shoulder, the top of your arm, initiating the move, like right in your socket there. So that pushes your elbow forward, your wrist forward, your hand forward, and then pulls your arm back, your elbow back, your upper arm back. And then stop and rest. And of course, the rest isn't resting so much as it is taking time to feel yourself, to give yourself attention. And then bring your left arm up again. Now this time, think of your shoulder blade. Your shoulder blade is able to slide on your ribs. So imagine your shoulder blade gently pushing your shoulder forward, your arm forward, your hand forward, and then your shoulder blade bringing it all back. Be sure you come all the way back to neutral, take a breath, stop and rest if you need to. If you feel the least little bit of fatiguing of holding your arm up, don't hesitate to bring your arm down and rest. We accomplish more in doing that than we do in efforting. And everybody stop and rest. And then come back to the edge of your chair again. Bring your left arm up again. And this time, you just go ahead and reach with your arm, your left arm, a time or two gently, as if you're reaching for something and then bringing it back. Noticing what parts of yourself are you aware of using as you're doing this. And as you reach forward, can you sense movement in your ribs? If so, what part of your ribs do you feel the movement in? You think of your shoulder blades sliding. Can you sense movement in your spine? As your arm goes forward, can you sense a response in your upper spine? And then bring your arm down, leave it alone, let it rest.
There is a big difference between the two sides.
We use your right all the time.
Yeah, I do.
Mhm.
You know,
So what are you noticing that's different?
everything over here feels like it moves, and just the top part of my left feels like it moves.
Isn't that interesting?
It is.
Okay, so now, again, bring your right arm up. Bring your right arm up, yeah. And just, come forward on your chair and bring your right arm up and just, again, go back to gently reaching forward with your right arm. What do you do with your belly when you're reaching forward with your right arm?
this? I see your shoulder.
I'm doing it with me. You're doing it with you. And then bring your arm down. And take a moment and in your imagination, draw a line from your right shoulder to your left lower quadrant. And then draw a line from your left shoulder to your right lower quadrant. Where do you see those two lines intersect? Where do they cross each other? And notice, do they cross each other like right on top of your spine, or are they off to one side or the other of your spine? Okay. Now bring up your right arm again. And as you're beginning to gently reach forward with your right arm now, where did you automatically put your attention to initiate the move? Pardon?
On the X.
On the X. Okay. So that line goes from your right shoulder to your left lower quadrant. How much of yourself is participating in this move now?
If I was standing, it would be your whole body.
If you were standing, it would be your whole body. So does that mean that you're like pushing on your one foot or the other? And is your one knee going forward than the other? Okay. Mm-hmm. So if we think of our skeleton moving, okay, everybody pause, bring your arms down, put your hands on your knees. And now gently push your right knee forward. And then think of those, just take them forward and back a few times, thinking of those diagonal lines. So when you take your right knee forward and the diagonal line that goes over to your left shoulder, what response do you feel? And now pause for a moment. Feel what you feel. Feel the two sit bones on your chair. And now begin to take your left knee forward and your right knee back. And let yourself relax. The left knee goes forward, the right knee goes back. Let your chest be soft, your jaw be soft, your shoulders be soft. Kind of focusing on your skeleton. As you're doing that, notice your ribs on the right and your ribs on the left. What do they do? When do you tend to get taller or shorter? What are you doing with your belly when you're doing this? Do you hold your belly in? Do you push your belly out, play with it and see what effect it has if you pull your belly in, and what does it do if you push your belly out. As I'm observing, notice as your left knee goes forward, what part of you goes up, what part of you goes down. As your right knee goes forward, and then leave it alone, sit back on your chair and rest.
It's hard to push the stomach out and do these. I have a hard time pushing the stomach out and doing these.
Isn't that interesting? Well, your stomach needs to be able to push out and to come in. So it's moving when you're doing this.
But it usually feels like it's being sucked in. I don't know if that's just,
Well, yeah, that's probably the habit for most people, is to suck it in and tuck it under. That's kind of the American way, which is really hard on backs. And stop and rest. And then come forward again. Be sure your feet are under your knees, not under the chair. And now just let your hands rest on your knees, and just gently take your right knee forward, your left knee back, and then alternate a few times. And become aware of what you do with your belly. Our belly needs to be able to move in and to move out. So play with what happens when you, and don't go to the extremes, when you just gently bring it in a little and push it out. And then let it go. And just rest. Feel your two sit bones on the chair. Does it feel like you're sitting more heavily on one side than the other? Or is the weight equal? Notice your breathing. As you inhale and exhale, how deep in yourself can you feel the response of your breath? You look like you have a question. No? Okay. What do you notice? Do you feel taller, shorter? Go ahead and stand. You can come forward on the floor so that you're not, you have a solid, so you have a solid surface. And just let your arms hang. Feel the way you feel, how you feel your arms hanging on your skeleton. You feel your shoulder blades hanging behind you. Feel the way your feet connect with the floor. Pardon?
I feel like someone's pulling my arms down, pulling my feet.
You're kind of heavy, or you're just like. As you inhale and exhale, notice where you feel movement in yourself, in your rib cage, in your torso. We know that our lungs don't go, our lungs just go so far, but when you inhale, as we begin to let go of our chronic muscular holding, we can begin to feel the reverberation of our inhalation and our exhalation. Like it feels like it goes all the way to the floor of our pelvis as we begin to let it go of the chronic holding. So as you're standing there now, just let yourself look a little to the left and a little to the right. As you're looking a little to the left and a little to the right, can you sense the rotation of your whole spine? Or how far down your spine can you feel the turning? Is there a subtle response in your torso, in yourself, as you turn your head to the left? Can you feel a subtle response in your torso or along your spine or your ribs, any part of yourself that you're looking to the left, and then as you look to the right? And then when you're ready, go ahead and walk around. That's it for today. Thanks for joining us, and remember to keep on moving well.
What could you lose in a home fire? Your possessions? Your home? Your memories? Don't let your world go up in smoke. Make sure you have working smoke alarms and keep heaters 3 feet away from anything that can burn, because fire is everyone's fight.
President Roosevelt signed the Bill of Rights.
I've always appreciated the American Legion's
My gratitude to the American Legion.
Thank you all to the American Legion.
We have millions of veterans that are members of our organization. Thank you.
The American Legion. We serve America and its veterans. We pledge ourselves to our veterans, our youth, a strong national defense, and Americanism. These 4 pillars shape our work and what we do for America. There is power in our numbers. We're the largest organization of wartime veterans in the nation. We are 2.5 million members strong, men and women from every state in the nation and around the world. No other veterans organization wields this kind of power. We work relentlessly within our 4 pillars of service, and we succeed. The American Legion takes care of our fellow veterans and their families. We maintain close ties with Congress and the leaders in Washington, D.C. They respect us. They listen to us. We sponsor research and press for medical care and benefits for all veterans and active duty service members, whether they are members of the American Legion or not.
President Roosevelt signs G.I. Joe's Bill of Rights.
You've heard of the GI Bill of Rights, one of the most important pieces of social legislation of the 20th century. It was written and passed largely through the efforts of the American Legion. We were instrumental in the formation of what is now the Department of Veterans Affairs to make sure our veterans get the care and benefits they are promised and deserve. The young people of our nation are our future. They benefit from exceptional programs and generous scholarships that only the American Legion offers. We provide athletic programs like American Legion Junior Shooting Sports, Legion Baseball, and educational and civics programs like the Oratorical Scholarship Contest and Boys State and Boys Nation.
As Supreme Court Justice Hugo Black stated, the quality of justice that Americans receive should not depend upon the amount of money they have.
We promote citizenship and an appreciation of government. We have all been directly involved in our nation's defense as wartime veterans. We know what policies, tools, and manpower our military needs to protect this great country. We fight to get these things done.
We're all very grateful to have the American Legion on point.
We take our case all the way to the top in Washington, D.C. to ensure that America is prepared for any threat. We are patriots through and through. We believe in our flag and all that it stands for. Our Constitution, our Pledge of Allegiance, our way of life are all fundamental to maintaining our freedom and the standing that we have as the greatest country on earth. We promote and defend these values every day in communities across the nation. These pillars represent not just what we do, but who we are. We're here to serve our fellow veterans, their families, and all of America. We are here for them. We are here for you. The American Legion asks you to join us in our mission. If you share our vision and commitment to America, visit our website at legion.org or your nearest American Legion post today.